Welcome to the Joanne Avison podcast. And I'm absolutely delighted that I have my friend, my colleague, somebody that I work with, and somebody that I've grown to know and love over recent years in many different courses and many different ways. And that is Kelley McLaughlin. Hello, Kelley.
Hello, Joanne.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm great. Yeah, it's morning here, so I'm enjoying the morning. And thank you for having me here. It's my
Pleasure.
It's an honor to be here, and to anytime I have any moment I have with you is a grace. And so thank you.
Ditto. What a lovely thing to say. Thank you. Oh my goodness. So, Kelley, I had the wonderful privilege of meeting you at Ohio State University Anatomy Department. And we were there with various professors, Neil Thies and Glenn Gaudet. Do you remember?
Yes, from BC, right here where I'm. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Boston College. And he showed us, we'll talk about what he showed us in a bit. Let's just get clear that you are a John Barnes Myofascial Release practitioner. You are a student of yoga and various kinds of bodywork, but I know that you thread that bodywork into your own bodywork practice because you're always looking to give your clients homework. Because I know one of your main themes is empowering others on every level. And let's say that's physical, that's emotional, that's mental, that's spiritual. Let's say on all those levels, all the aspects of the wholeness of being. And you're in Myofascial Magic in Action, the course of the book, of the discussion of the many, 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 many years of practice to make it real and make it practical, because I know that's what you're all about. And I just want to say thank you for your participation and for your inspired response around what is this word magic that we use? And I think I answered, well, let's discuss it so the world can hear instead of just you and me.
Yeah.
And so you up for that?
Yeah, let's do it. It's such a fantastic word, and I like word. You're a storyteller. I don't know that I'm a storyteller, but I do love stories, and I love words, and I love poetry, and I do feel like words, as we've seen throughout history, just have so many definitions and meaning to different people. And part of magic, or a lot of part of magic, which we'll talk about today, I think is how we find meaning and what our experiences are for us and the meaning in those. I think it's very important. So I love this idea of discussing magic because it kind of let me delve deep into it from the experience that we had. And having myofascial magic in action is your book, is your program. And the word is there, and that's not by mistake, and that's an important word. Because what we're experiencing when we do this work, my experience doing the Myofascial Magic in Action program, along with my experience as a John Barnes myofascial therapist, it is what we're witnessing. And then being part of a mystery school education too, there's a whole magic element there as well. And so it's just nice to have this discussion to open up the curiosity for everybody. Well, what magic is in their life and what's the meaning of that word to them?
I love that you said that, because I think one of the essential things is that what does that mean to them? And I want to unpack this very lovingly and very gently. And I just want to be really clear with my audience that I know and love many of you. And thank you. I so appreciate when you write to me. And I've just got to tell you a little, just in everybody's ear, but my podcast producer is amazed at the amount of responses that we get and comments that we get and emails that we get. And I really appreciate it. So I want to take care of everybody's listening in this moment. And that is, I don't have a definition of magic that makes it right, wrong, or otherwise. My commitment is, since I was a tiny, tiny child, I hold the archetype of the magical child. It's very, very dear to me. And I literally, I did a course when I was in my 20s that was about creating your future from the future. It was a very profound course. It had a huge impact. And we had to design our future from our language, from our words, as in your words create your world.
Yeah.
And this is the work of Werner Erhard many, many years ago. It was the EST training, and then it became the Landmark Education Forum. And I was deep in it for 20 years, and I still have huge respect for it as a course that really gets people integrated into the world to make things work the way they want to create them to be. It's a very empowering program. And in advance, how I create my life was magicalness in everyday life.
Yeah.
And so that means something to me. But what it is, and you said it beautifully, it means something to each person that's unique to them. So let me just caveat this conversation with my mother insisted on magicalness. Now, what do I mean with that? Well, when we went out walking in the rain, we weren't allowed to step in a puddle if we were in our best clothes. But she would then take us home and get us into our wellies, as we call them. I think in America, do you call them rubber boots?
Boots, but nowadays wellies too, because we hear all sorts of things from us in boots. Yeah,
boots, whatever your rain boots.
Muck boots is another one.
Muck boots, yeah, exactly. So sorry if I'm trade naming anything, but what we did, we went puddle bashing. So we actually called them puddle bashers. And if we would see, it made you laugh. That's the magic.
Yeah.
And so we had puddle bashers and we went out in the world. And I remember, honestly, I was teaching this in a yoga class years and years ago. And somebody said, could I take the name puddle bashers and trademark them? And I said, but that was my childhood.
Right.
Why would you want to trademark my childhood?
Yeah.
I was like, really? But anyway, that's another thing. So if anybody's heard of puddle bashers out there, it's very possible that they originated with my magical mother. And she would do things like, we had upside down days. And it was like, why is it an upside down day? Well, because we created it like that. Well, what's an upside down day? Well, we have breakfast for dinner and dinner for breakfast. So we would have.
Oh, I love that. That's super cute.
Yeah. Yeah. So my point is to my listeners, I'm not telling you what magic is. I'm inviting you to recognize the distinction of magic as something that uplifts your spirit, as something that leaves you with more than you expected or means something more to you. And I want to make a very clear distinction. I'm going to hand this over to you. Is there for you a difference between magicalness and conjuring? Because I think we're not talking about conjuring. We're not talking about stage tricks with sleight of hand and card tricks.
But even with that even with conjuring or that kind of use of magic, like a magician, a stage magician, they know the illusion that they're creating, right? It's illusionary. You could say it's not real, but something is happening. But what I like about stage magic is that people are in amazement and want to, like, how did that happen? And so then they are witnessing something that is mysterious, that is unknown to them, even if the magician knows it, what he's done. And then then they can go on and explore from there. There's something that says, oh, I'm so curious about this. What just happened? And so then that opens their being to be able to explore something. And in that way, I appreciate stage magic, because if we take that same essence of that curiosity and bring it into our real life about everything in our life, and especially when I speak to my clients and that healing, for their own healing, if we bring that to ourselves, or when we bring that to a moment in our life and just really sit down and go, oh, how does that work? How did that happen? And then that draws us in. And that's how we can start to get in the essence of real magic. And then we talk about intention. And so we're not talking about the magic of conjuring. It's more, if we have a ritual, anything that we do that is ritual, there's an intention behind it. And that intention, that is the thing that creates that magic. Just like the magician knows what he's doing, he has an intention, and he's done a ritual. And if you read Houdini's story, that man was every day. He had to have a very rigorous workout regime. He read tremendous amounts of books. He was very educated. It was a practice and it was a dedication. So it's that kind of same thing. Whatever we have in our mind is our goal, is or what we want to really bring to our lives, or if it's healing, or if it's a moment with other people, or a moment in nature. So in some sense, you could say it's like a conjuring, but just in a real way.
I love that, Kelley. I love that because I love your bandwidth, your tolerance field, because, one of the themes that upsets me terribly is when we reduce what we know as a sort of awareness into historical, intellectual, we reduce it only to the intellectual background.
Mhm.
And when you come with the word magic, whether it's spelt with a K or a C or a CK or the whole story that goes with that, and I know there is one,
Sure.
but what I love about what you just said is the inclusivity and the diversity in that what I think you're saying is, okay, so this person has gone on stage to conjure a rabbit out of a hat or do a so-called trick of illusion, but he's actually worked very, 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 very hard at that. And his intention is to inspire and confuse and amaze and leave people in awe. How did that happen? And I think that's one of the essence of what you're saying. How did that happen? So when I talk about the magic of fascia, I think the magic of that is deeply integrated with its mystery. And the truth is, we all live with mystery. If you think of a figure of eight, where one half is the history and the other half is the mystery, we live at the point in the middle in present time. It's the only thing we can do.
Yeah.
And there's a lovely saying that miracles are mysteries until science solves them.
Yes. And then,
So
yeah.
it's a dance between the known and the unknown. So when you're watching a stage magician, I love what you said. When you're watching a stage magician, they are playing with your sense of not knowing how they did that.
Mhm.
And yet came down to practice. And so let's take you with a client. Client comes into you with a back pain.
Sure.
And you've done a lot of work to know at least what questions to ask. Have you ever had a client say to you, that was magic, Kelley? And you've answered, no, it wasn't actually, or something. Just tell me a story, an occasion that comes to mind.
Oh gosh, that happens a lot.
Well, I know some of your clients, so I'm really being mean to you here because they talk about you and they just go, I don't quite know what happened, but it was amazing. It was like magic. But that's not because you haven't practiced. This is what the point I'm making, right?
Oh God, I haven't practiced. I mean, I've dedicated many years, hours, money, blood, sweat, tears, the whole thing into experiencing this, and not only studying, not just researching it for myself or taking the training. I've done several trainings in different, taking courses with you, with John Barnes, which is, and um, it's also from my own experience. Everything that working with Deb Epstein. So everything that I come with is something that I have done for myself as well. And so this is things that I take very seriously, because in some ways, how could I understand someone else? How could I empathize with someone else in some ways? I mean, we can, but without experiencing it and really going deep into this and practicing it and being part of it. And then I know what that means for me. So then I have what I consider incredible amounts of resources. And so if a client comes in, even the same client that I have on a regular basis, when they walk in the door, it can be a different moment, things
Mhm.
going on very differently with them, just because it's the same person who I know very well and love. In that moment, there might be something that's there that hasn't been seen before. And you just wait and be with them. And I feel like that's kind of that magical moment where you're saying, what is that? What is in the present moment presenting today? And then allowing them to have that space to see it for themselves. And so you could say intuition, intuitiveness. So like I say, I like to just, the body does give off, like when I touch, especially the touch, or even just with sound and all of the things that happen. And then it's a conversation.
Yeah.
It's a conversation. It's a conversation of, yeah, notice this, and allow them to explore that. You talk about somatic register, and I love that. It's one of the newer things from myofascial magic in action. And I'm exploring, and you were talking about it in our last class about the somatic register. And, I'm often thinking about is that the magic piece that, we're kind of talking about in this work, and what fascia can do for us as an individual, and how each of our very unique paths truly are. And so what I love about this work, because from what I experience in the best work and the best mentors and healers and teachers that I have worked with, and you being one of them, and the various people that I had mentioned, Sente Center, Palm-Patty Ridges, so many people, is that they did that for me, and that they allowed me to really explore through asking questions. A true magician asks questions, but there's something about the time. And that's the important thing, is that to be in the present time, to be in the present moment is this exchange that happens to say, let's see what's happening right now. And that beauty of, like John Shack will say, fascia is the tissue of temporality.
Yeah.
And so in any moment, if we really, we talk about in this work, a lot of people, and like the buzzwords and everything out there, is being in the present moment, right? But what does that really mean?
What does it mean for you?
What does it mean for me? And awareness. It's not being, maybe our thoughts in the past, or, we could have our mind racing on things that we're worried about, and we could be worried about the future or thinking about something that already occurred. It could be in our bodies. We come in and we're holding some kind of chronic pain or a chronic, let's say, shape, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
So we're holding a shape, and the shape that we hold is because over time we functioned in that shape, and maybe that shape really served a purpose at one point. And this is the beauty of how fascia works. That shape served a purpose. Our fascia is there to protect us. Our fascia loves us.
I believe that. Yeah, I agree with you.
It really is trying to protect us.
Oh, listen, in my world, fascia is the tissue of love, light, and sound. And literally, it's that simple. It emits light, it transmits sound, and it loves us to pieces, literally. It loves every piece of us because it is every piece of us. But I love what you just said about that we shape ourselves around an issue, and then it's in the tissue. Where else has it got to go? Because we're spiritual beings moving around in an earth experience, right? And I totally respect the intellectual aspects that we had to learn. You went to school, you learned with whoever you learned with. I love being amongst those people. But I'm also your friend, and I have huge respect for the work that you've done with people like John Barnes and so on and so forth. But you're not trying to be me or be him or be Carol Davis or anybody else that you know and love and admire. You can only be Kelley when you're with somebody, right? So you, as you said, you've got all that knowledge and that wisdom, and it's like, I like to call it a toolbox. It's a toolbox. It's like having a dictionary, a vocabulary.
Yes, that is magical. Because I suppose magical or magic is the thing that happens from intention and from practice. And even though you have magical is, or something that's magical happens because we can't never know an outcome.
Well, yes.
My Sente teachers, Paul and Patty Richards, they were the first ones to bring that to me, that we can have all the intention we want, but we can't intend an outcome. Right. And I think that that's really important. And it's especially when I practice it with others. And when people come and they ask me, what is it? what is going on. I try not to answer, to say, because the truth is, I could have very intuitive guesses, or I could even, maybe I do even know, but we know what that can do to somebody if we know,
Yeah.
and then it's kind of like an injustice. We kind of take it from them.
Yeah. I call it hijacking their experience.
Hijacking the experience. But
Yeah.
in all honesty, deep down, even though I think I may know, how am I supposed to know? It's your body. It's your experience and your being. I wasn't there when you experienced those moments. Right? You aren't there. I was not present in the time that this happened with you. I'm not there by your side every day, even if I'd love to be. So I don't know. You're the one that knows yourself more than anybody. And it's that kind of thing. But to have that exchange with someone, to be able to, I remember, I'll never forget the day I was like completely just down and out. I could not, I'm a mom of many children. And I just remember one day just being so down and out. And a perfect stranger, this elderly man, turned to me with the most sincerity in his eyes. And he said, "You're doing a really good job." And in that moment, I was just, that's magical.
That's heaven talking. Absolutely.
And for me, I suppose it's bringing that in every moment with every person. And it is that conversation, and it is seeing all the subtle things that are being expressed through someone's body, and it is their emotion, and it is the psychology, because we are never separate from all three. Like, you just were in that infinity loop. But like Sandy was saying, I call the energy body, the imaginary, the psychological, and then the physical. And we are all three all the time. We are whole. And it's just where we're kind of, I suppose, navigating or moving through. But if we can stay in that center, and, like, I love how you and Paul say, well, it's natural way for fascia moves any direction at any time. And I think about that just with our own lives. Imagine if at any moment and any time or any experience we're having, we can actually be open enough to experience that we can make a choice to move any moment at any time. And what is the foundation under that? And what are we intending? And that's why when someone comes in, or if I'm meeting with someone, and it's not just in my office, I try to be that with everyone in my life at all times. One of my mentors, Deborah Everson, she's brilliant. She would say, where you do one thing, you do it everywhere. And I say that again, where you do one thing, you do it everywhere. And that's another thing why I have my clients to say, you can be in my office and you can be on my table or off the table, and we're doing these movements. Please, I beg you, here's some resources. I think this would be a fantastic chiropractor for you. Acupuncturists, go to Joanne and Avison, study the exercise. Whatever it is, yeah. You don't have to talk to me. Oh, please, Joanne. Are you kidding? Like, listen, do this, love it. See, you are magical, Joanne. And that's what so I blame spirit for everything. I think spirit does the work, and I call it spirit. What you just said was so beautiful, and it reminds me of one of the teachings, one of the main teachings in and forgive me, this is not about any religion. I'm not making it about religion, but it is one of the most ancient teachings, is love thy neighbor as thyself, and love thyself as thy neighbor, I'm sure, is the other part of that. And what does that mean? That means honoring each person. So whatever you're doing, do it with the level of loving that you would give yourself in an ideal world. And this is something I wanted to ask you about, because where it comes to magic, and I love everything you're saying. We could talk for hours on every bit of it. There is I know some people disagree that anything that's being done properly and scientifically can't be magical, because magic and science are separate, which is ridiculous. Because when you meet, I work with a number of professors, and the most profoundly brilliant professors who create the research that we all rely on always say the same thing to me. Every one of them has said it in a different way.
They said you've got to have your heart, mind, body, and soul open to mystery, or you're not really asking a question. You're just trying to be right. And the quality of the ask of the question and the openness to the answer, it sends you exploring on a ladder that you go up the ladder, but each question is a rung on a ladder towards the great mystery. Who are we? How are we here? And it doesn't matter if you're watching, I don't know if you watch Brian Cox ever, you see Brian Cox doing these beautiful pieces about the actual chemical substances of the stars, of what we're made of. A dying star is how come we're here. We're part of the cosmos.
Yeah.
This isn't mystery. This isn't magic. This isn't fake news. This is the truth. Every part of us is an inner microcosmos.
Yeah.
And so it's science and it's philosophy and it's everything. And I just think we put things into factions. We put things into scientific boxes. And don't get me wrong, I love the information, but we can't reduce ourselves to the information. And I just wanted to ask you about when you come across something that you don't understand, what do you do?
What I do personally?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I take really deep dives into who's trying to understand it.
Would you say curiosity was a theme in your life?
I mean, curiosity is probably one of the main themes in my life. And it's funny because I think when people say curiosity killed the cat in that term, and again, when I hear something like that, I'm like, where did that come from? Let's explore this. Right. What cat did it kill? But so I'm going to go because this quote, and I looked it up when we were talking about magic. I'm like, what do people think about magic? I know what I think about magic. I know my experience of magic. Let's see what others do. But one thing that I will say this, I have a deck of cards from Dave Lanyon, who is one of the head people at the mystery school. And authentic knowing is the theme of this card. But have only opinions of things you are an expert on. The rest should be a desire to learn through questions. True experts often find a need to ask questions. So in a way, when I look at that quote, it reminds me a lot of what you were just saying.
The true scientists just, they work out how to ask the question.
They work out how to ask question. And I like that even in this quote, and this is, he's a hermetics genius, but have only opinions of things you're an expert on. And I love that he put opinion in there, because opinion doesn't mean we know still. An opinion is still open to questions. And when you look at the scientific method, and I have wonderful science people aside from you and, John Starkey, but John Barnes, like all the people that I study under, they're all scientists. Carol Davis, she's amazing. Christine Muschke, and then even with people in the mystery school, like one of the people, Teresa Bullard, she's a neuroscientist. And so this isn't absent. The scientists aren't absent from this mystery and from using magic. And isn't that what we're doing as scientists? We have an intention. We have a question. We have an intention to figure out what that is. And if it's a question, it's a mystery. Something before us is a mystery. We don't know what it is. And so we do an experiment. And that's an action. So for magic to occur, there needs to be an action. Thought is an action. But nothing, the greatest power is our physical action. Because our physical action is here on Earth. I know we're spirit beings experiencing Earth, right?
Well, we're in a school.
We're in our school.
Yeah.
And so, for all of the people who might not believe in that, again, some of my favorite people in the world are atheists. Certain kinds of atheists, because they put their heart in the morality, and even then they're just like, I don't know. I mean, that's what I love. My sweetheart, my special person. One thing I love about him is, no matter what information he receives, he still says, well, I don't know. And I think that is that curiosity that says we can get all the information, get the data, It's a grace. So we have our data, we gather our data, but then what is the science? Many scientists, and I know about the scientific, um, almost like it's a mission. A true scientist loves to be proved wrong. In some ways, they like when they're
Exactly.
because then they can keep going. And so in that way, that to me is magical. In that moment, that's where that communication and that magic is happening, where we can't predict the outcome, but here's the outcome. But then we go, oh wow, okay. Or maybe the experiment did come out as we predicted, which is great, but does that mean that's the end of it? If that were true, we wouldn't be where we are in history right now, correct? We wouldn't be in this present moment where we are. Like studying fascia, studying anatomy, right? We like mentioned at the time of Descartes. Yeah. We could understand at the time with the resources we had, and it was curiosity that brought those people to want to explore the body. And I know there was like a turf deal with the separating the spirit from the body, which is a whole other thing. But now we've come fast forwards these centuries later, and we have had developed so much technology and so much science that has thankfully brought us to be able to have these instruments and these tools to be able to study and explore, like, Gerard Gimberto, to be able to take the video of what's going on inside for us to really go, oh my gosh, look at this tissue. What is this?
What I love about what you've just said, and it's just for me, it's perfectly epitomized in our experience in Ohio. I'm going to remind you of that and see you're smiling knowingly at me. You know what I'm going to say. John Sharkey had invited Professor Glenn Gaudette to show us his research in Ohio while we were in the anatomy lab. And we also had Neil Thies there. Now, Neil is a liver pathologist. He's extremely skilled in his medical research and science. He's one of the protagonists and the key one, I would say, because of his work in the world, behind the distinction of the interstitium, the inner world of the fascial matrix and the in-between of that.
Yeah.
And of course, he's a Buddhist.
Yeah.
So his work is intimately integrated with the mystery and the magic. And he said that to me himself.
Yeah.
And he's also a very dear friend. I absolutely adore him. So there's this very human integration. But Professor Gaudette did not know Neil Thies, if you recall. Now, what happened that day, and this is John Sharkey's magic. He literally creates and facilitates the possibility for people to come together without knowing what the emergent properties are going to be.
Yeah.
He doesn't know.
Yeah.
And so he's standing there, if you remember, and Glenn Gaudette was showing us the incredible work that they've been doing at Boston College in their bioengineering, where one of the students had recognized the vascularization pattern in a spinach leaf. So they decellularized the spinach leaf to see what the pattern was. And it was similar to the pattern of a decellularized tissue of the mitral valve of the heart. Mm. Now, this is pure science, right, in a sense. Yeah. But as you just said, I'm just literally exemplifying what you just said. Somebody had the idea, and he openly told us, it was one of the students, what if we could make this a map, an architecture, right, for the heart cells, mm-hmm, to be, instead of it costing so much money for everybody to have any heart surgery, yeah, that we could facilitate that surgery with a spinach leaf, essentially. Mm-hmm. And years of research later, he told us all the practical things, like they weren't allowed to bring spinach into the lab because there's a law that says no food in the lab. Yeah. The bioengineering, and they can't bring it, all that. Anyway, my point is, at the end of it all, he showed us where they'd taken stem cells from a rat, from the back of a rat, and injected them into the spinach leaf, created this matrix of very, very fine skin, as it were, mm-hmm, or subcutaneous tissue
Yeah.
of the rat using the spinach leaf architecture, decellularized and sterilized as best they could do it. And then they put in the rat cells, and so that the rat cells could use the architecture of the spinach leaf to make a leaf of tissue. And then they put it in the rat, and they'd got as far as showing the image of that tissue. And that was as far as they got. And at that point, if you remember, he put the slide up on the wall. And Neil Thies, I'll never forget as long as I live, because I just had lunch with him and he was quite tired. And he shuffled up to the wall to look at the slide. And Glenn looked at me and John as if to say, do you need to get security in? Who is this person? I didn't know who he was. It was hilarious.
I love Neil.
He just was so non-egotistical. It wasn't the I am of anything. He was just present in the room with all of us. If you could have seen the bond between me and John either side of the room, holding the space, looking at each other with this look of, is this the moment? Is this why this is happening? And Neil walked up to the wall and he pointed at the image of the cell and he said, it's taken. I will never forget as long as I live. Because Professor Gaudette was standing there going, does he know what he means? Does this mean it's worked? Oh my God, it can't do. What am I doing in this lab doing this? Because we're not in the lab. I'm just doing a presentation. Who is this person? What is that? You could see a million questions.
I remember this moment.
Yeah, it was afternoon and
Neil's seeing, I'm like, ooh, something's happening right now. And
the whole room knew, right? We all had the hair standing on the back of our necks. We all knew something bigger than us was taking place in front of us, but we didn't know what. Yeah. And I'll never forget, because John and I were literally holding our breath on either side of the room, looking across, both knowing. I could literally, it was written in the air in front of him. It just said out loud, this is why I do this. This is the, please, like, was a mixture of, prayer and wanting, but no control of the outcome. None. It was surrendered. And Neil said, it's taken. And Glenn said, how do you know? And Neil said, because the spaces have merged. The in-between has merged. The rat tissue hasn't formed a barrier to the cellularized leaf tissue. Right. There is unity of the spaces. Mm-hmm. I'm not using his words now, I'm paraphrasing, but you know what I'm saying. He basically said, I can tell by what's not there what it is. What's missing is any resistance in the rat tissue to the spinach leaf. The spaces in between, the interstitium has united. You remember? Yeah. That's what he said. Those were his actual words. The interstitium has united. Oh. And Professor Gaudette's face was a picture, because he wanted so badly for that to be true. Mm. And Neil was so like, yeah, no, I'm wearing a blue t-shirt and this is taken. It was like his job every day. But you see, in science, it wouldn't necessarily have happened in scientific work that they would have found each other in these two different labs, one in New York and one in Boston. Yeah. Which is the point, right? Yeah. And yet, for me, the magic was, John got these people together in a lab, but he couldn't have made anything happen. No. He just gave an opportunity for a possibility to take place, that magic would emerge. Yeah. And in fact, something very scientific was put on the table, and a very well-trained scientist. Yeah. I mean, both Professor Gaudette and Professor Thies have got credentials coming out their ears. Right. Exactly. That's what I love. And someday in the future, we will be able to use spinach leaves as tissue for mitral valves, maybe. And that means lives can be saved. Right. Exactly. I mean, that's huge. Right. And we witnessed it. We're not trying to take credit for anything. No. We witnessed credit. It was witnessing.
Which means it creates magic in us. I was just having that conversation the other day while I was walking in the woods, looking at leaves. It's fall now. It's leaf time here in New England. Yeah. And I just recalled that very day and that very moment when talking about, Professor Gaudette and that experience and just what they were doing with that. And thank you for bringing that again to remind me of that moment. because that is what magic is. It's not, there's something beyond, right, that occurs. And I love that you said that also the way you describe it again, that the interstitium, there's no barrier and it is merged. And so
That's what meant it worked.
and that's it. And it's kind of like that itself is an explanation. In that moment, no one could have put that together. There was no, I mean, I don't even have to repeat it because you already just said it perfectly. And that's what for me, I love to see with ourselves and what we're capable of in the experience that we each have. We have resistance to things, right? Maybe that's what makes me think of that when you're talking about there's no barrier anymore. There's no resistance.
But we need those barriers when we get them because they're the containers, and we need the constraints because that's what contains us.
Right.
But what I love about what you're sharing is that it's so epitomized in the willingness to ask questions and the possibility of finding things out, and then the discovery of different elements coming together that might not have come together in the moment.
In the moment.
But if that student hadn't dreamed of making a difference in the world, and Professor Gaudet hadn't dreamed of making heart treatment more available to more people, and it may not happen for another 10 years. We don't know how long it's going to take for this to be,
Sure.
Verified and done properly and made
to practice. And yeah.
Yeah. And all
So
that.
many things in society that would want to resist that too for their own reasons. But and it all started with a question, right? It all started
at lunchtime. Somebody was eating their lunch and saying, look at this spinach leaf. It's got the same vascularization.
What is that? That to me is that what is that? What is that moment that makes us say, huh, what in that moment made that person, that student, look at a spinach leaf and say, I wonder.
Exactly.
What if this could happen? It is that's almost the in-between that you're talking about as well. It's that moment that happens that we can't explain, that something inspires us. Where does that come from? I don't know. We can do scientific experiments on where that comes from, I suppose. Why not? Hey,
but you know what happens? I think that product's magic.
If anyone out there who really wants to know if there's a scientific reason of where wonder comes from, go have at it. I'd love to know about it.
I don't want to know where wonder comes from. I just wonder where wonder comes from and what I love.
So it's just taking that energy, which is going, huh? And then this works. When we do the micro movements, right? We do those moments where we move our body in a certain way, or our macro movements, or how we, and just going, oh, that works. And then we know from the science, the way fascia is this, spiral and tension compression system, and how it, the rebounding, the recoil, and it makes sense. But even then, the outcome, that register for us personally, that's the practice, what comes from that magic. That's for me, the myofascial magic in action is we're doing a practice, we're doing an action, and something emergent property or somatic register happens.
Well, going back to the spinach leaves, look how many years of work they did to get to the level that they were able to do that skin graft.
Yeah,
that was years in the lab, not weeks.
I know, right? That's dedication.
And full circle, look at your dedication and look how hard you've worked and so many different aspects. And you've just basically taken the whole diamond and said, I want to do every facet. And I'm curious about every single thing and why it shines even.
I remember Paul, I had the one conversation I was having with Paul Thornley. And I said, I just need the refinement. He goes, there you go. He's like, how to organize and refine it and then bringing that in. And that's the thing for me. I just feel like there's always options. I guess I'm a person that when someone comes to me and there's so many things, and if there's something that I don't know, maybe there's something we can find, right? That is part of the whole, look, we're in the information age. It's almost too much and we get to clear our heads. But then that quiet space and that self, we get to go, wow, we have infinite amount of choice. but we can get an idea of what choices that we choose to put in action for ourselves. And maybe it takes years. We're never finished, right?
We're never finished. We are going to end our conversation here, but we're never finished. Kelley, thank you. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Joanne. It is, as usual, an honor and a pleasure. And, I don't feel like this conversation is totally finished, because that's the magic of something being magical is we can always be exploring and being curious and just witnessing, something that is unexplained and beautiful.
Magical. Kelley, thank you.
Thank you.
God bless.
God bless.